hadn't seen Tyler since high school, so when we bumped into each other at our 10-year reunion, it was like flipping open an old yearbook and finding a page that hadn't aged. He looked almost exactly the same easy grin, same way of leaning in when he talked, like everything he said was just between you and him. We weren't best friends back then or anything, but we'd shared a couple classes and always got along. We ended up catching up over drinks that night, and when I mentioned my Airbnb plans fell through, he offered to let me crash at his place. Said it was no trouble. He had a big old house out near the edge of town, way more space than he needed. I figured why not? Better than shelling out last minute for some motel with a moldy ceiling and stiff sheets. His house was a 2-story craftsman, tucked behind a row of old trees with a wraparound porch and peeling green paint. One of those places you could tell used to be beautiful but had gone a little neglected. He unlocked the front door and flipped on a lamp, and the inside smelled faintly of wood and something older, dust maybe, or mildew. "Sorry, it's kind of a mess," he said, kicking aside a pair of boots by the door. "Haven't had company in a while." The living room was mostly empty except for a sagging couch and a few cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. There was a coffee table with one leg propped up by a book. He led me down a narrow hallway to the guest room, plain, but clean. Just a bed, a dresser, and one of those freestanding coat racks in the corner. "You're the first person to sleep in here in a long time," he said with a chuckle. "Bathrooms across the hall. Just knock if you need anything." I thanked him, dropped my bag, and sat down on the edge of the bed. The room felt weirdly still. Not cold or anything, just quiet in a way that made you notice every little creak and tick. That first night, I slept okay, lightly. I thought I heard something in the hallway once, like footsteps, but figured it was Tyler going to the bathroom. The next morning, he made coffee and eggs, and we shot the breeze like old friends. But I started noticing little things. Like the way there were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, one blue, one pink. No big deal, right? Maybe he'd had a girlfriend. But the pink one looked fresh, not dusty or unused. And in the shower, there were 2 different kinds of shampoo. I didn't ask? Not my business. But that night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a soft click. The kind of sound a door makes when it latches shut. I sat up, listening. The house was still again, too still. I was wide awake now, and the hallway outside my door was pitch black. I got up, cracked the door, and peeked out. Nothing. Just darkness. Still, I could swear I heard the faintest sound of movement somewhere upstairs. The next morning, I asked Tyler casually if anyone else lived with him. His smile faltered just slightly. "None," he said. "Just me." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just heard some noises. Thought maybe you had a roommate or something." He paused. "This house makes sounds, man. It's old. The wood expands, shifts. You get used to it." I nodded, let it go. But the weirdness started stacking up. One day, I came back from a walk and the guest room door was wide open. I always kept it closed. My bag had been moved, not stolen, not rummaged through, just shifted slightly. The zipper was half open. I checked with Tyler. He said he hadn't touched it. Then there was the door at the end of the upstairs hallway. The first time I tried it, it was locked. I assumed it was just storage. But a couple nights later, I woke to the sound of something faint, like a dragging sound overhead. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and that's when I saw it, a shadow moving along the gap beneath my bedroom door. Not pacing, just standing there. I didn't move, barely breathed. After maybe 30 seconds, the shadow disappeared. I stayed awake until sunrise. At breakfast, Tyler was cheerful as ever, like nothing happened. I looked at his face, tried to gauge if he was messing with me. But he seemed normal. Too normal. Like someone wearing a normal mask a little too well. I told him I was thinking of cutting the trip short, heading back home early. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. Later that day, while he was out grabbing groceries, I decided to snoop a little. I know how that sounds, but something was seriously off, and I had to know. I tried the upstairs door again. Still locked. Then I noticed something. The molding along the doorframe had scrape marks near the lock, like it had been forced open before. I went to the kitchen, rummaged in a drawer, and found a ring of keys. Most were unlabeled, but I grabbed the whole set and tried them one by one. Third key turned it. The door opened into a dark, musty room that smelled like old sweat and rotting carpet. It was small, just a mattress on the floor, a broken chair, and a pile of crumpled clothes in the corner. And above the mattress, on the wall, were photographs. Photos of people. Some of Tyler, some of random strangers, and some of me. One of them showed me sleeping. In the guest room. I backed out of that room so fast I nearly tripped down the stairs. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I had to leave. I started packing immediately, throwing clothes into my bag. That's when I noticed my phone was missing. I was sure I'd left it charging by the bed. I tore the room apart. Nothing. I was halfway to the front door when Tyler walked in, holding a bag of groceries. He looked at me, then at the bag on my shoulder. "Everything okay?" he asked. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Yeah, just got called back to work." "Emergency?" He nodded slowly. "Ah, gotcha. Bummer. Well, safe trip, man." I could feel his eyes on me the whole way to my car. I drove straight to a gas station, borrowed someone's phone, and called the cops. I told them everything. They said they'd send someone to check it out. Later that night, I got a call from an unknown number, a blocked ID. I didn't answer. The voicemail was short, just breathing, and then a voice I didn't recognize, whispering, "You shouldn't have used my key." They never found Tyler. When the cops showed up, the house was empty. No sign of the photos, the mattress, or the room. Even the locks had been changed, like he'd packed up and vanished the second I left. A week later, I got my phone back in the mail. No return address. Inside the photo gallery was a new picture, one I didn't take. It was my front door, taken from the outside. And beneath the doormat, I found a spare key that wasn't mine. Story 2. I stayed with my cousin Ben for 3 weeks while I was job hunting in a new city. He'd offered up the guest room in his house, and I figured it was a good way to save on rent while I got on my feet. Ben and I weren't especially close, but he was family, and I appreciated the help. His place was decent, an older ranch-style house in a quiet neighborhood. A little rundown in spots, but clean and comfortable enough. The layout was simple: 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, kitchen, and a long hallway that connected everything. There was something odd, though. One door in the hallway was always locked. The first time I asked about it, Ben just shrugged. "Closet," he said. "Storage. Boring stuff." I didn't press. Everyone's got their quirks. But over the next few days, I started to notice things. First, there were the sounds. At night, when the house was dark and still, I'd hear a faint thumping. Slow, rhythmic, like someone knocking gently, not on the front door, but from inside the house. Sometimes it stopped after a minute. Sometimes it went on longer. And it always seemed to come from the hallway, from behind that door. I told myself it was probably pipes or the house settling. But I started locking my bedroom door at night, just in case. A few nights later, I was walking back from the bathroom around 2 a.m. when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The hallway was dead silent, except for the softest scraping sound, like fingernails brushing lightly against wood. And then I saw it. A shadow, just the edge of one, slipping away from under the locked door. I froze, heart pounding. The hallway light was off, but the moonlight through the window gave me just enough to see. I leaned closer, stupidly, like some cliché in a horror movie, and bent down in front of the door. That's when I saw the keyhole. Just an old-fashioned circular hole, too small to see much through. But I was curious. I held my breath, squinted, and leaned in. What I saw nearly made me fall backward. There was an eye looking right back at me. Not moving, not blinking, just staring. I scrambled back so fast I hit the opposite wall. My legs felt like jelly. I could barely stand. Ben's bedroom door creaked open then. He poked his head out, groggy. "Dude, what are you doing?" I pointed at the locked door, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's someone in there." He looked at me for a second, then down the hall, then back. "It's a closet," he said flatly. "You're tired. Go to sleep." And he shut his door again. The next morning, I told myself it must have been a dream. A trick of the light, or maybe I wanted to see something. But then, over breakfast, I noticed Ben acting different. Tense. He barely looked at me. I tried to bring it up again, casually this time. "Hey, I ever tell you I have a weird phobia of closets? Especially locked ones." He laughed, a little too hard. "Good thing it's just a storage closet, huh?" Then he changed the subject. Later that day, I snooped a little, I'll admit it. While Ben was out, I checked the hallway. The door was the only one with a lock on the outside. Not a knob lock, a slide bolt. Like you'd used to keep something in, not out. I got down on one knee and looked through the keyhole again. Pitch black. But it felt like something was just beyond it. Breathing. Waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up in bed, listening. The thumping returned around 2:30 a.m. This time it was louder. Angry. I heard what sounded like whispering, too faint and muffled, like someone murmuring into a pillow. I couldn't make out the words. It just kept going. The next day, I confronted Ben. I need to know what's in that closet. He stared at me for a long time, then said something that chilled me. You don't want to know. I pressed him, told him I was starting to feel unsafe, that if he didn't tell me, I'd leave. He rubbed his face and finally said, Look, there's a reason I keep it locked. It's private, but it's not what you think. Then what is it? He hesitated, then mumbled, It was my brother's room. I blinked. I didn't know you had a brother. He nodded. His name was Drew. He had issues. Bad ones. I took care of him after Mom died. But one night, he attacked me. I had no choice. He didn't finish the sentence. I asked what happened to him. Ben looked away. He's gone. Then why lock the room? He didn't answer. That night, I locked my door, shoved a chair under the knob, and laid in bed staring at the ceiling. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard the lock on the hallway door click. Then slow, dragging footsteps. They stopped right outside my room. I held my breath. The doorknob jiggled once, then again, then silence. After a long while, I fell asleep somehow, out of sheer exhaustion. The next morning, I found deep scratches on the outside of my door, like someone had raked fingernails down it. Not once, but over and over. I packed my things, told Ben I appreciated the help, but I had to go. He didn't stop me, just said, probably for the best. I moved into a crappy studio across town and started working a warehouse job. Tried to forget about it. About a week later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a key, the same kind as the lock on Ben's hallway door. No note. Nothing else. Just a key. I texted Ben. No reply. Called straight to voicemail. I ended up driving past his house a few days later, just to ease my mind. But it was empty. No car in the driveway. Curtains drawn. Mail piling up in the box. I haven't heard from him since. I still have the key. I keep it in a drawer, wrapped in a sock. Some nights I swear I can hear faint thumping even from this apartment. And sometimes, when I wake up, the sock is unwrapped, like something wants me to use it. Story 3. I moved into the place because it was cheap. That's really all it came down to. I'd just gone through a rough breakup. I was working freelance construction jobs, and I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere low cost, somewhere nobody would bother me. The house was old, creaky, and not exactly pretty, but the rent was dirt cheap and utilities were included, which should have been my first red flag. It sat at the edge of town on a sloped lot with overgrown hedges and a gravel driveway. 2 stories, with that sagging look old houses get when the foundation shifts a little over the years. The landlord, a guy named Carl, was maybe in his 50s, pale, thick glasses, heavy smoker. When he showed me around, he seemed decent enough, if a little twitchy. He brought me in through the side door, into the bottom unit. It's all yours, he said. Just the downstairs, though. Upstairs is sealed. Old storage, haven't opened it in years. I looked up the staircase at the end of the hall, a narrow thing that led to a wooden door with a big deadbolt. Sealed? I asked. Carl shrugged. It's locked. Don't got the key anymore. Don't worry about it. I didn't push it. Like I said, cheap place, quiet town, and I didn't plan to be home much anyway. At first, it was fine. A little drafty, but manageable. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, decent water pressure. The windows didn't open all the way, and some of the outlets sparked if you looked at them wrong, but I figured I could deal. The first time I heard the footsteps was the 3rd night in. I just turned in, maybe midnight. It had been raining all day, that soft, steady drizzle that never quite lets up. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard it creaking floorboards overhead. Soft, deliberate, like someone pacing slowly. I froze, listened. More footsteps. A pause. Then a dragging sound, like a chair scraping across wood. I waited for it to stop, heart thudding in my chest. Eventually it did. I convinced myself it was probably just the house settling. Old homes do that, right? The next morning, I called Carl. Hey, are you sure there's nobody upstairs? He chuckled. Positive. You're the only tenant. I hesitated. Well, I heard footsteps last night. Like, clear ones. Silence on his end. Then, nah, nobody's up there. Like I said, it's just storage. Probably a raccoon or something. I didn't know how to argue that. I'd lived in places with squirrels in the attic before it happens. I let it go. But then it happened again. And again. Almost every night. Around the same time, slow pacing, then furniture moving. Once, I could have sworn I heard a faint humming. Like someone humming a lullaby. I stopped sleeping well. One night, After lying awake listening to the creaking for almost an hour, I finally grabbed a flashlight and went out into the hall. The staircase leading up was dark. The overhead bulb burned out. I stood at the bottom step, listening. Nothing. I crept up slowly, flashlight shaking a little in my hand. When I reached the top, I tried the doorknob. Locked, like Carl said. But the odd thing? The knob was warm. Not hot, not scalding, just warm. Like someone had been holding it not long before. I went back downstairs, unsettled, but telling myself maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just in my head. Then other things started happening. Little things, at first. Food disappearing from the fridge, not all of it, just small stuff. A half-eaten sandwich, a bottle of juice that seemed lower than I remembered. I thought maybe I was just forgetting. But then I came home one night and the front door was unlocked. I always lock it. Always. Nothing was missing, but things had been moved. My boots were in a different spot. A lamp had been turned slightly. A drawer I didn't open was left cracked. I called Carl again. This time I didn't play around. Someone's getting into the house. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, Carl, I'm sure. Someone's been here." He sighed. "I'll come by tomorrow. Take a look." He never showed. I tried calling him for 3 days. Straight to voicemail. Then, one night, I got home late from a job. I was exhausted, dragging, and just wanted to crash. I walked into the house, dropped my tool bag, and looked up. The attic stairs were down. I didn't even know the house had attic stairs. The kind that fold down from the ceiling like a ladder. They were never there before. But tonight, they were lowered, hanging open in the hallway just past the bathroom. And I swear to God, I saw the last glimpse of a bare foot pulling up into the darkness. I grabbed my hammer from the bag and ran up the hallway, heart racing. But when I got there, the attic was pitch black. I called out, "Who's up there?" But no answer. I didn't go up. I wanted to, but something in me knew that was a bad idea. Instead, I shoved the stairs back up, locked myself in my room, and stayed awake all night with the hammer in my lap. The next morning, they were back down again. That was the final straw. I packed everything that day. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about the deposit. I just wanted out. As I was loading up my truck, a neighbor from across the street walked over. An older woman, maybe in her 70s, wearing a pink housecoat and slippers. "You moving out already?" she asked. "Yeah, place isn't working out." She nodded, glanced toward the house, then said something I'll never forget. "Last guy didn't stay long either." "Nobody does." I paused. "Why's that?" She looked at me, serious now. "That place was a duplex years ago. A young couple lived up top. Husband killed the wife, then himself. Right up there. After that, nobody wanted the upstairs. So they sealed it." I stared at her. "Wait, you mean nobody lives up there?" She shook her head. "Not officially." She started to turn back to her house, then looked over her shoulder one more time. "You didn't open the attic, did you?" I shook my head slowly. She nodded like that was the right answer. "Good. Don't. Whatever's up there doesn't like being seen." I left. Drove straight through the night to a friend's place out of state. Slept in the truck until they got home. A week later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. No words. Just soft humming. It was the same tune I'd heard through the ceiling. And in the background, just faintly, was the sound of footsteps above me pacing. Still pacing. Story 4. I bought the house because it was cheap, plain and simple. It was a squat little fixer-upper just outside of town. 1 story, 2 bedrooms, built sometime in the 60s. Definitely rough around the edges, but the price was unbeatable. I'd been renting for years, and the idea of owning something outright, even something a little busted, felt like a step forward. It had good bones, as they say. Needed work, cracked tiles, peeling paint, wiring that definitely wasn't up to code, but I liked the idea of taking it on piece by piece. I'm not a contractor or anything, but I know my way around a hammer. The first few weeks were uneventful. I was still moving in, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, eating takeout surrounded by boxes. The place had a weird smell, kind of earthy, damp, but I figured it was just from being closed up for a while. The previous owner was an older woman who passed away, and the place had sat vacant for about a year, from what the agent told me. That smell, though, it never went away. Around week 2, I started hearing things. At first, it sounded like squirrels or raccoons under the house. The crawl space ran the full length beneath the floor, just dirt and beams and darkness. It wasn't sealed off or anything, just one of those little hinged access panels along the side of the house. Every so often, I'd hear faint scuffling, sometimes late at night. Nothing loud, just movement. So I set some traps, tossed some mothballs down through the floor vents, and figured that was that. But then I started noticing things that didn't make sense. First, it was the tools. I'd leave a wrench or a drill in the living room while I worked on something, and the next day it would be gone, only to turn up later in a completely different spot. I assumed I was just scatterbrained, adjusting to the chaos of moving. Then I found the wrappers. Not mine. Crumpled granola bar wrappers, stuffed behind the water heater. Empty water bottles tucked into the back of a closet I hadn't opened yet. I don't eat granola bars. That's when I started to get this feeling, like I wasn't alone in the house. It's hard to explain. Not a sound, not a sight. Just a creeping awareness, like someone had just left the room before I entered. I'd get home from work and swear the air felt used. I checked the locks, made sure the windows were shut. Everything seemed secure. Still, the feeling got worse. One night, I stayed up late wiring a new light fixture in the kitchen. I had the floor vent cover off nearby, checking a connection. While I was crouched down, I heard something underneath me, a soft sniffing sound, followed by a low, almost inaudible grunt. I froze, then slammed the vent cover back on. That night, I dragged a lawn chair into the yard, sat under the stars, and didn't go back inside until sunrise. The next day, I bought a small motion-activated camera online. One of those cheap ones people use for wildlife or porch pirates. I rigged it up to point down into the crawl space, through the vent. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to be sure I wasn't going crazy. The first night, nothing. Just shadows and bugs. Second night, the motion light triggered, but the feed cut out. I figured it was a glitch. Third night, I got something. I don't know how to describe it. The footage started normal, grainy, dark, a bit of wind rustling the weeds near the vent. But around 2:13 a.m., something moved into frame. Slowly, crawling on all fours. It was a man, pale, filthy, shirtless. His hair was matted and long in his face. I couldn't see it clearly, but it looked wrong, twisted, somehow. He crawled slowly past the camera, then turned back, leaned toward the vent, and stared straight into the lens. I paused the video. His eyes were wide, unfocused. But he was definitely looking, not at the camera, at me. I checked the timestamp. That was right around when I'd been asleep. In that same room, I barely slept the rest of the night. I kept hearing things, floorboards creaking, soft tapping on the walls, the occasional faint shuffle beneath me. The next morning, I grabbed a crowbar and pried open the crawlspace panel from outside. It was like stepping into a tomb, dry earth, cobwebs, the smell of mildew, and sweat. I shined a flashlight around and saw them. Blankets, old food containers, a stained pillow, and something that made my stomach turn. Polaroids. Dozens of them. All of me. Sleeping. Brushing my teeth. Cooking. Some taken through the windows, others through the floor vents. And then, in one of the far corners, I found a little nest of wires. He'd rigged up a peephole system, tiny drilled holes from underneath the floor, lined up with specific spots in the house. The air vents, the bathroom tile grout, even the wall behind my bedroom mirror. I backed out of there, slammed the panel shut, and called the cops. They searched the property. Didn't find him. Whoever he was gone. They said it looked like he'd been living down there for months, maybe longer. Could have been squatting even before I bought the place. Maybe even while the old lady was still alive. I put the house up for sale the next week. Never went back inside. But here's the part that still haunts me. Last month, I was staying with a friend on the other side of the state. Different city, different everything. I told him the story, of course, every detail. One morning, he came into the kitchen, pale as a ghost. I heard something last night, he said. In the vents. I laughed, thinking he was messing with me. Then he held up something he found beneath his bed. A single Polaroid of me sleeping in his guest room. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, a hand reaching out from the air vent.